But first, breaking tonight, 2 judges potentially facing judgment over immigration-related crimes. We have a follow-up to a bizarre story we first brought you last night. A now former judge in New Mexico has been taken into custody over allegations he allowed a member of a violent international gang to stay in his home. Also tonight, word of another jurist in big trouble. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt has the latest from our West Coast Bureau tonight. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening, Brett. We'll start with that second jurist, Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan, who was arrested by the FBI this morning and within hours was making her first court appearance, charged with concealing an illegal immigrant and obstructing an official proceeding.
No justice, no peace. Let the judge be released.
Protesters gathered outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse today shortly after the arrest of Circuit Court Judge Dugan, who is accused of helping an illegal immigrant, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, avoid arrest by ICE officers at that courthouse. The criminal complaint against Dugan says, quote, despite having been advised of the administrative warrant for the arrest of Flores Ruiz, Judge Dugan then escorted Flores Ruiz and his counsel out of the courtroom through the jury door, which leads to a non-public area of the courthouse.
We could not believe, actually, that a judge really did that. You cannot obstruct a criminal case, and really, shame on her. It was a domestic violence case.
Milwaukee's Democrat mayor is furious at the Trump administration's action in arresting a judge at the courthouse.
These actions right now run completely counterclockwise to what he's trying to do, what he thinks he's trying to do, which is make a safer America.
In New Mexico, another judge appeared in federal court today after being arrested Thursday and charged with tampering with evidence in the investigation of his alleged harboring of an illegal immigrant. Joel Cano resigned in March from his position as a county magistrate judge based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, after federal agents raided his home and took into custody Christian Ortega Lopez, allegedly a member of Tren de Aragua, as well as 2 Venezuelan men, all of whom had been staying in a guest house on Cano's property. Cano claims he saw no signs of gang membership and wrote in a letter to the New Mexico Judicial Standards Commission, quote, I cannot help but feel that the capture of these boys is just another unfortunate addition to the current nationwide effort to apprehend, detain, and deport anyone not born in the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi also said today she believes that the judges in these cases are, quote, deranged and consider themselves above the law. And the AG said the arrests should send a message that the Trump administration will act not just against illegal immigrants, but also against the judges the White House and DOJ feel are protecting those illegal immigrants. Brett?
Jonathan, thank you.
But first, a Wisconsin judge under arrest and facing charges accused of flouting federal law to help an illegal immigrant. Federal prosecutors say Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan allegedly helped that migrant avoid arrest by ICE officers at the courthouse. It's a bizarre case and it's still unfolding. Hello, I'm John Roberts in Washington. Sandra, good to see you back again.
All right. Good to be back with you as well, John. I'm Sandra Smith in New York, and this is America Reports. So today's arrest of a judge marks the second such case in the last 24 hours. A former New Mexico judge and his wife were taken into custody yesterday. Federal agents arresting them for harboring a suspected Tren de Aragua gang member in their guest house.
For more on all of this, we are honored to have in the new U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi. It's good to talk to you, Pam.
Good to talk to you.
So let me read a little bit from the criminal complaint here. And Judge Dugan says, despite having been advised of the administrative warrant for the arrest of Flores Ruiz, Judge Dugan then escorted Flores Ruiz and his counsel out of the courtroom through the jury door, which leads to a non-public area of the courthouse. A foot chase ensued. The agents pursued Flores Ruiz for the entire length of the courthouse and ultimately apprehended him. According to this complaint, Judge Dugan was visibly angry that ICE was there to arrest Flores Ruiz, even tried to kick the deportation agents out of the courthouse.
Yeah, and to set the stage for you and Sandra, this was truly horrific. This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up 2 people, a guy and a girl. beat the guy, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital. And John, you know, it's so rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Wow.
You know, Madam Attorney General, great to have you here, and thanks for coming back on America Report. So we remember these words of Tom Homan, the border czar. This was March 17th, and his message on these judges who apparently are trying to get in the way of this administration's efforts. Listen.
I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
So when you see these judges trying to obstruct your efforts to make this country safer, what is your message to them?
We are going to prosecute you, and we are prosecuting you. I found out about this the day it happened. We could not believe, actually, that a judge really did that. We looked into the facts in great depth. That's her picture up on the screen, Hannah Dugan, who is now in custody. You cannot obstruct a criminal case, and really, shame on her. It was a domestic violence case of all cases, and she's protecting a criminal defendant over victims of crime.
In fact, she just had an initial appearance in court. There's also this other case coming out of New Mexico. Judge Joel Cano and his wife were arrested for harboring a TDA member at their home. The alleged TDA member had been picked up by law enforcement, and now he and his wife were picked up and arrested. And you say that you believe, as the Attorney General, that the person that they were having living at their home was a truly potentially bad individual.
Yeah, that's the judge up on the screen now who got arrested. Yeah, his name is Ortega. He was is a known TDA member, So he comes through Eagle Pass December 2023. He's living in our country. January 2025, ICE, they get a tip. Tom Homan's done a great job. Our FBI did a great job on this case, too. They get a tip that he is living with a judge and the judge's wife. So they have him arrested first on immigration charges. A Judge Damian Martinez releases him, saying that Judge Cano has a good BS meter and wouldn't let just anyone live on his property.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the associations with this violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, and this person that they harbored in their home, he was showing signs through clothing, we were told, tattoos. There was evidence through voice messages and text messages of his association to TDA. So what charges will Cano and his wife face, if any?
So Judge Cano, soon to be former Judge Cano, his charges were just unsealed. He's charged with obstruction. He admitted post Miranda. He took one of the TDA members' cell phones himself, took it, beat it with a hammer, destroyed it, and then walked the pieces to a city dumpster to dispose of it to protect him. The wife also is charged with destroying evidence. Sandra, not only that, this TDA member, and he had on a necklace that said kill, something about death. He had tattoos all over him. He also had on his cell phone pictures of two decapitated victims, decapitated, gruesome photos, and he was sending them out, and whoever he was sending them to was sending back saying, hey, you need to be careful. You shouldn't be sending these. You shouldn't be texting these photos out. Not only that, these two, the judge and his wife, gave him assault rifles that belonged to their daughter. That's what they're charged with. In the criminal report affidavit, he goes to a shooting range with these assault rifles, with a suppressor, with other known TDA members, and they're shooting. This is the last person that we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them.
Let me, if I could, Madam Attorney General, come back to the Wisconsin case and Judge Hannah Dugan, because in allegedly letting the perpetrator and the attorney out through a non-public exit and allowed them to get out in front of the building, we had a situation where we've seen that I know Tom Homan was complaining about in Colorado, where there would be no transfer of a defendant from a jail to ICE custody on a detainer request in a way that was orderly and protected public safety. They would dump them off in a parking lot, and then ICE would have to chase them around with the DEA or whatever, or FBI, and pick them up. This ended up in a foot chase in public sight. It says here, a foot chase ensued. The agents, and this was a DEA agent and an FBI agent, pursued Flores Ruiz for the entire length of the courthouse, ultimately apprehended him near the intersection of West State Street and 10th Street. So the judge apparently has created a situation here where you have a public foot chase. And we all know that, well, sometimes they can come off without incident. They can also turn into very dangerous situations.
John, that's exactly right. She put the lives of our law enforcement officers at risk. She put the lives of citizens at risk. A street chase, which is absurd that had to happen. But yes, she put a lot of people in danger. That judge did it. So did the other judge. Judge Cano is charged with. They were allegedly giving him assault rifles, AK-47s, AR-15s, with a suppressor, a known TDA member, letting him go to a shooting range to refine and perfect his shooting skills.
Madam
What's
Attorney
happened to our judiciary is beyond me.
Yeah, so when the American public hears this and they think these were once upstanding people in their communities and their professions, and they put it all on the line for this, I mean, have you dug into their motive? Like, what inspired them to carry out these acts and harbor criminals?
They're deranged is all I can think of. I cannot believe. I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law, and they are not. And we're sending a very strong message today. If you are harboring a fugitive, we don't care who you are. If you are helping hide one, if you are giving a TDA member guns, anyone who is illegally in this country, we will come after you and we will prosecute you. We will find you.
If I could just finish off with this idea, very significant development that you're arresting judges now. Now, it could be that the judges have engaged in terribly bad behavior and deserve to be arrested. But you know what critics will say? They'll say, oh, this is a government that is expanding the powers of the Article 1 of the Constitution. Now they're arresting judges. How do you respond to that?
No one is above the law, John. No one is above the law in this country. And if you are destroying evidence, if you are obstructing justice, when you have victims sitting in a courtroom of domestic violence and you're escorting a criminal defendant out a back door, it will not be tolerated, and it is a crime in the United States of America. Doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be prosecuted.
Madam Attorney General, great to see you in the studio.
Great to see you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
But tonight, we want to go back to this stunning story that is unfolding live, and we're getting more information on this judge in Wisconsin who was arrested by the FBI today because they say she tried to help a domestic violence suspect get his way out of the courtroom as they were about ready to begin procedures, because she thought she was aware that there were federal agents in the building that were looking for him. So she spirited him out a side door, according to the filing from the FBI. This is Judge Dugan that you're looking at next to a bust of Abraham Lincoln here. So also, a former judge and his wife were arrested in New Mexico. They were accused of letting a suspected Tren de Aragua member live in their guest house after he did some work on their home. So with that, we bring in another sort of perspective on this story. We've talked the legal side of it, some of the political side, but let's bring in Ron Vitiello, senior advisor to the Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection and former acting ICE director. So, Ron, you have a background as an agent for ICE. If you went into this courtroom because you understood that this person was going to be in the building and this is someone that you're looking for, how would all of this have played out in your mind? And how shocked would you be if the judge let this person out the side door?
Well, this is an activity that the agents engage in, right? They make a plan. Maybe they do some surveillance. They're aware of the court docket. They probably know that some judges and maybe the defense attorneys, other people in the courtroom would be resistant to their presence. But I don't think you could imagine that the actual judge in the trial would do things like this, let the guy out the back door. She's got, she's a judge. She's supposed to be a leader, a pillar in the community, somebody that the constituency there in Milwaukee goes to as a trier of fact, right? She's supposed to be above, her standard for law enforcement should be above, the normal person. But no, these agents show up and she berates them while she's letting this guy out the back door. So now she's going to go down infamously in history as someone who skirted the law and thought she was above the law. This is a crime. The FBI is going to charge her for lying to federal agents. They ought to charge her for aiding and abetting a criminal illegal alien in the country. The Wisconsin bar ought to revoke her license to practice ever again in her life. She deserves our scorn.
So here is a new statement from Senator Dick Durbin, Senate Judiciary Committee, on the Wisconsin judge. He says, when immigration enforcement officials interfere with our criminal justice system, it undermines public safety, prevents victims and witnesses from coming forward, and often prevents those who committed crimes from facing justice in the United States. How does this make America any safer? Your reaction to what Senator Durbin has to say here?
Well, he's very confused, right? Those law enforcement officers were there doing their job. They're going to that courthouse most likely because Milwaukee won't let him in the jail. When the guy was arrested the first time for the battery that he committed, they could have arrested him in the jail after he got arrested the first time, or when he made bail, he would have been turned over to ICE. But Dick Durbin, he wants to have it both ways. He says he's for law and order. He says he's for the people, but he's not for the victims of illegal aliens who also commit crimes in the United States. He's not for the rule of law because that arrest would have been completely lawful and it wouldn't have interfered at all. If she would have done her job and heard that case or whatever the hearing was, they would have taken that man into custody after the hearing safely without incident. She's the one that screwed up here. Right. And Dick Durbin, giving her cover makes us all glad that he's on his way to retirement.
Yeah, she prevented justice from moving forward for him. If he was innocent, he was being given that opportunity to prove himself so, and the ICE activity could have waited until after that process. Ron Vidiello, thank you very much. Great to have you with us, as always.
Okay, there is a lot to unpack here. Rosanna, I want to start with you. She said you threatened them. She may want to clarify that, but that is what she's caught on tape saying.
Well, she's saying basically call and make themselves
Raise a
known.
ruckus.
But threaten is a different word when you say threaten. And we've seen Maxine Waters say that, too. And people listen to them. Unfortunately, as we know, there are people in this society who take literally what you say. And I don't know. I don't think it was a great idea. Can we get back to the courtroom? Because I think everybody is just trying to figure out what happened in that courtroom with the judge being arrested. And yes, it's concerning. It's disappointing. But I was also thinking about the victims who were in that courtroom. I've covered many cases as a reporter of domestic abuse. A lot of these victims don't like to go against the people who have attacked them. They're scared. They're afraid of retribution. So that woman is sitting in that courtroom where all of a sudden the man that she believes, attacked her is at a side door, disappeared, and the next thing you know, who knows what happened in that courtroom? All hell breaks out. They're looking for him. I was looking over the criminal complaint, and Jessica and I were talking earlier, and she was very, very concerned about the standard, what we were starting with something like this. But when you look over this and you see that a courtroom deputy in this complaint basically said that this was very unusual in that courtroom, in the judge's courtroom. They said first, the courtroom deputy had previously heard Judge Dugan direct people not to sit in the jury box because it was exclusively for the jury use. However, the defendant was allowed to sit in the jury box. Secondly, the judge is then overheard basically telling the defendant and his attorney to go out the side door. And the next thing you know, ICE agents are being told what's going on. They're running after this guy on foot. I don't know. Something is very fishy here.
Yeah,
and smelly.
They chased him down the street.
They chased him down the street and they got him.
He had and there's a debate about how he got out and what the judge directed him to do.
I know everybody's worried about the judge, but,
Right. And so what DHS is telling us, it says he has a laundry list of violent criminal charges, including strangulation and suffocation, battery and domestic abuse. We couldn't verify all of that, but we could verify 3 domestic abuse charges. Infliction of physical pain or injury is what we're told. But Greg, the allegation is the judge felt like that's the guy who needed protecting.
Yeah, I would like to quote Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and every self-righteous Democrat. No one is above the law. Mm-hmm. And that includes left-wing judges who subvert the law themselves. This isn't even about political ideology or even immigration. We're seeing judges who clearly lean towards a specific side. They're called activist judges, but that's a contradiction. Judges are not activists. They are judges. Maybe this judge has a backstory with this illegal. Could it be? It's not just the gavel that she's banging, Shannon. I want to talk about Frederica Wilson. It's hard to take her seriously when she dresses like she's auditioning for the Real Housewives of the Kentucky Derby. They define their... What you're seeing is a lot of these people in power define their positions by their hatred for Trump. If he came out against self-harm, she would probably punch herself in the face. I understand loyal opposition. That's your role when you aren't in power. But you should have some duty to your constituents to offer them a better path than what you're seeing. What would you do differently? The whole point of this was getting rid of the worst first. We have an illegal immigration problem. We have a border problem. Now we are actually doing something that people voted for. This is the adult solution, the worst first. What is your solution other than, I don't know, trying to stop the process altogether? That's my question. Is this going to happen with every single deportation? Are they just going to try to hinder what Americans voted for, bogging it down and exhausting us with maybe like 1 case a week, something that they never did with Obama when he deported 2.4 million illegals? They're turning an administrative process into a legal one. Imagine a game where a corrupt umpire throws a flag on every play, so the game can't go forward for one reason or another. This is what they were doing. And by the way, this is what they did to the first Trump administration. They constantly waged lawfare on him. And this is lawfare now specifically pointed at the process that Americans voted for, which is to get the illegal aliens out of this country.
Well, and Greg, to your point about the polls, we have brand new Fox News polling this week that showed that a majority of people do agree and support the president, approve, Jessica, of what he's doing when it comes to border security. I mean, the numbers have gone to a trickle by any objective standard, and they say they do want people out of this country if they're here illegally. A guy who's accused of these things, is that who Democrats want to be seen aligning with or defending?
I think that Democrats and people who have respect for the separation of powers are aligning with the judge, not with this guy who was let out the side door and got picked up. Maybe he deserves to be deported out of here. He deserves to stay in court, and then he deserves to go if he's not supposed to be here, and those things are true. But yes, in our Fox News polling, you see an approval, positive approval for the president on border security, but he's underwater in terms of handling immigration. And now that's true across the board on all the major polls. We've seen it in Reuters. You see it in Quinnipiac. You see it in the YouGov poll. Americans have only seen 3 months of what this administration is doing in terms of immigration, and they went from approving it 10 plus points to a strong disapproval. And that's because it feels completely lawless. And Greg says these are activist judges. The Supreme Court, a conservative court that Donald Trump himself was able to pack, is not an activist.
I'm talking about her.
No, I'm talking, but it's about all of them. He's gone against the Supreme Court.
But that he's
gone against the Fourth Circuit, a Reagan appointee who wrote that decision saying you can't send this latest shipment to Venezuela. Now you're talking about this woman, a county judge. And when Pam Bondi comes out there and says, we will come after you and we will prosecute you, we will find you, that is meant to have a chilling effect.
Well,
they didn't need to.
What's your solution? Again, you cite polls, but I apologize. Adults have to do the adult job, and it's not going to be popular.
You know what the adult job is? First of all, not announcing this on social media, having to take it down and then putting it back up. The adult thing to do would be to have called her in and have her come in and have a conversation about it. They didn't need to publicly arrest this woman. They wanted to make a
Joey, I have a feeling you have something to say about
that. They didn't need to make a show of it, but everything is for the cameras.
Somebody whose actual purpose in this world is to enact justice and sometimes be the sole deciding factor on what justice is. who sits in front of people and has their entire lives in her hands, and she can't do something as simple as obey the law herself, and we should just hide it under the rug, bring her into a room and pat her on the hand for putting a guy back out on the street or trying to hide a guy from the proper authorities who punched someone 30 times and then struck a woman trying to break it up. With all due respect, this whole argument about these Venezuelan gang members or people who say they aren't in a gang, but they've got MS-13 and code on their knuckles. To say that, well, whatever it, okay, well, not everybody. You've also sat here and argued against using tattoos to say if someone's a member of MS-13. So anyone who has a tie to MS-13 or the government suspects of it, if you tell me that they deserve due process, I tell you that I know Laken Riley's dad, and I would go out and kick every one of them off out of this country just because of Laken Riley. So when Frederica Wilson said something like more people are getting rolled up because of Laken Riley, you're damn right they are. Because this whole country saw what happened to Laken Riley. And we said, hell no. And then that act was passed by Congress that we voted in and signed into law by a president that we voted in. And if not being for due process for illegal immigrants that come here and commit crime makes me a bad American, okay, well, at least I'm still American, and that's a hell of a lot more than they are.
But conservative juggernauts like Antonin Scalia have spoken about the fact that people who are here undocumented deserve due process.
They can have their intellectual arguments. I live in the real world where people get hurt, where my sister gets a head-on collision from a drunk illegal who was brought here by a coyote that the Biden administration was happy letting operate. I live in the real world. I don't live in New York. I don't live in D.C. I don't live by the Supreme Court. I live in Northwest Georgia. I live in a town that's 78% Hispanic.
Anymore?
Abrego,
absolutely,
Abrego had due process.
That's why all those people are here.
No, he didn't.
The problem here is that you say due process, and we're all supposed to go, ooh, that must mean some kind of court. No, it's not a court. It's an administrative action. The guy was told what two judges said he was an illegal.
Well, something tells me he's going to get.
He was not allowed to be deported to El Salvador.
And something tells me he's going to have some version of due process, and it's also going to involve him not residing in this country. Okay.
Yeah.
But first, let's go to our senior White House correspondent, Jackie Heinrich. She's at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What do we know, Jackie, about this latest judge who's been arrested and charged?
Yeah, John, we know that the judge has been released on her own recognizance after an appearance in federal court that was about a mile from her own courthouse, where all of this allegedly happened last Friday. According to the criminal complaint, Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan escorted a Mexican national facing battery and domestic abuse charges out of the courtroom through the jury door so that he could evade arrest, and also tried to kick the deportation agents out of the courthouse. Listen here.
Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
That Mexican national, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, was taken into custody during a foot chase, and now Judge Dugan is charged with obstructing and concealing. Trump administration's ordered local officials to assist federal deportation efforts or face investigation or prosecution, especially with focus on sanctuary cities. While Milwaukee is not officially a sanctuary city, they do have limited cooperation with ICE, and there are members of the state assembly protesting this judge's arrest right now, making a call to action. You had one member, Ryan Clancy, say what Judge Dugan did apparently was to obstruct fascism. That is a quote. These developments come after federal judges just yesterday blocked 3 key administration efforts that was halting citizenship requirements for voter registration, blocking efforts to withhold funds from sanctuary cities, and ordering the return of a second national who was deported to El Salvador. So much more to come on all these legal issues, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Jackie Heinrich at the White House. Sandra?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.